For years, my mom and brother bullied me. While Dad wasn't around, I recorded them on my phone and sent the video to him. Now he's filed for divorce, and my family says I shouldn't have been born at all. I'm 16 years old. I have an older brother who's 18, and he's literally the golden child, but only to our mother. Mom never tried to hide that she had a favorite, and as you can probably guess, it wasn't me. From early childhood, I understood that Mom loved my brother much more than me. I couldn't figure out why. I always tried to imitate my brother, doing everything he did, hoping to earn Mom's affection. But whatever she found charming in him irritated her when I did it. Eventually, I stopped trying to impress her because it was an impossible task. At least I had Dad, who loved me for who I am and didn't expect me to become an exact copy of my brother to be worthy of his love. He didn't have favorites, he treated us both equally, and I'm endlessly grateful to him for that because at least one parent was normal and supportive. Unfortunately, Mom wasn't the most pleasant person. She knew how to hide her true nature, and her worst traits only came out when we were alone with my brother. In front of Dad, she acted perfectly. It would have been much easier if Dad were home more often, but since childhood he's worked a lot and frequently gone on business trips, and he still does. So I had to spend a lot of time alone with Mom and my brother. The problem was compounded by the fact that Mom was a stay-at-home mom. Every time I came back from school, she was already waiting to start tormenting me and undermining my self-esteem. She endlessly criticized my appearance, found new reasons to pick on me, and instilled new insecurities in me every day. For context, I was a very skinny child, and in Mom's opinion, thinness in girls isn't attractive to anyone. She constantly reminded me of this. I wore glasses and had weird hair, which she also didn't like, even though, despite her awful personality, she was a fairly attractive woman, like my brother. She often said she wished I'd inherited her looks, but alas, I turned out to be the ugly duckling, and Mom never let me forget it. On top of that, my brother excelled in both academics and sports. I did well in school too, but I was completely hopeless at sports. I had no coordination whatsoever and hated any physical activity. But Mom forced me to do sports because she believed it would fix my body and make me more attractive. She also stuffed me with huge amounts of protein, thinking it would help me gain weight. But let's be honest, eating so much meat that the sight of it makes you sick is impossible. I think that's why I became a vegetarian a few years ago, due to childhood trauma from overeating beef and chicken. There wasn't much effect from that diet anyway because some people are just naturally thin, and I'm one of them. I didn't have any issues with my body until Mom started picking on me. To escape her attacks, I started wearing baggy clothes and my brother's old stuff because I was afraid she'd say something horrible if I wore anything that accentuated my figure. This went on until a few years ago when I discovered I had a talent for swimming. I'd never tried swimming before because Mom didn't force me to. She was terrified of water herself. But a couple of years ago, I got the chance to try out for the school swim team, and that's when it all started. Honestly, it literally changed my life. I finally found something I was really good at and threw myself into it 100%. My body quickly became more toned, I gained a decent amount of weight, looked better, and most importantly, I became more confident. For the first time, I felt happy. However, my mom and brother were clearly not thrilled about these changes. Now they had fewer reasons to pick on me about my appearance. I started looking better, and they had nothing left to humiliate me for. For a while, it seemed like they might back off, but I severely underestimated how much they hated me. They found a new way to torment me. I call it Cinderella syndrome. They expected me to be at their beck and call 24/7. The moment I sat down to rest, they'd find some task I had to do. In the end, I was doing almost all the housework. Actually, not almost, I was doing everything. When Dad was away on business trips, Mom and my brother came up with endless excuses to do nothing while I cleaned, cooked, did laundry, and handled all the dirty work. If I complained about being tired after school, they'd just say no one else could do it. Mom claimed she was too exhausted because she was getting old, even though she was barely over 40, which isn't even close to old age. My brother cited his busy school schedule. He was involved in tons of activities, so of course, he had the right to be tired. To put it bluntly, they turned me into a servant. They didn't just allow me to do all the work. They demanded it, hoping I'd eventually break and give up what made me happy. But I was determined that, no matter the cost, I wouldn't give up swimming. Plus, this only happened when Dad was away, which was about half the month. The rest of the time, when Dad was home, we at least had to pretend to share the responsibilities. Many of you are probably wondering why I never told Dad about this. First, I didn't want to destroy the family. After all, I just wanted everyone to be happy. I guess you could say I wanted to please everyone, and that's what caused most of my problems. I knew Dad loved Mom deeply. They were high school sweethearts, married right after college. Relatives told me how much they loved each other, and I was terrified of breaking his heart by revealing what Mom had become. I was also afraid he wouldn't believe me since Mom and my brother always played the role of a loving family perfectly in his presence. I didn't want to risk ruining the only normal connection I had with someone in the family, so I just stayed silent and endured it. But recently I changed my mind. They started going too far. I was exhausted from doing all their work. It hadn't interfered with my studies before, but now I had several advanced courses, and I couldn't afford to lose so much time and energy anymore. Plus, a couple of months ago, I got a phone. Before that, I wasn't allowed to have one because my parents thought gadgets would ruin my future. Maybe they were right, but it annoyed me. On my 16th birthday, Dad gave me my own phone. Now that I finally had both the means and the motivation, I decided it was time to expose Mom and my brother. I couldn't tolerate their disgusting treatment anymore just because they couldn't accept that I'd found something that made me happy. 2 weeks ago, I got a C on an assignment for the first time because the night before it was due, I had to wash a huge pile of laundry. Mom refused to do it, and my brother said he was too tired. I didn't have a choice. I needed clean clothes, and if I'd only washed my own, it would have sparked another fight. So I washed everything, spent a ton of time on it, and didn't have enough time to properly prepare for the assignment. My essay was rough, and I got a bad grade. It was completely unfair because it wasn't even my fault, but my teacher didn't know what was going on at home, so I couldn't blame her. When I got home and told Mom I got a C, I said I wasn't going to do all the housework alone anymore. Mom and my brother needed to pitch in too. But she responded by saying it was my own fault, that if I'd tried harder, I wouldn't need excuses. Once again, she held up my brother as an example. He's involved in everything and still gets good grades, while you just look for someone to blame. I think that was the final straw for me. I realized I couldn't keep tolerating this. At that moment, I couldn't record her words, but I decided that next time, I'd set up my camera and film everything to send to Dad. Let him figure it out. The next day, Dad came home and stayed with us for a few days before leaving again. I knew that as soon as he left, Mom and my brother would start up again and try to enslave me. So, on the day he left, as soon as he walked out the door, I started recording on my phone. As expected, within a couple of minutes, Mom and my brother burst into my room with a huge list of tasks I had to do. No, please, no explanation, just order after order. At the end, they told me to get started immediately. But this time, I decided to stand my ground and see what would happen. I told them I wasn't going to do anything. Luckily, they decided to act as disgustingly as possible, not suspecting they were being recorded. Mom called me a lazy cow, saying she was just teaching me because, with my grades and stupidity, I'd never amount to anything anyway. In her opinion, it was pointless for me to study and waste their money on education. My brother chimed in, just because I can do everything doesn't mean you can. Stop embarrassing yourself and accept your fate. You'd better focus on housework, at least that way you'll be useful. Maybe you'll become a maid someday. They kept saying awful things, even more than usual, and I was glad because it was all being recorded. My blood was boiling, but I held it together. I knew this would be the last time they treated me like this. When they finished, Mom ordered me to get to work one last time and stormed out, slamming the door. I turned off the recording and immediately sent the video to Dad. Along with the video, I wrote a long message explaining everything. How they'd bullied me for years, how they turned me into a servant when Dad was away, how they humiliated me and destroyed my self-esteem, how I was afraid to stand up to them, and how it had affected my grades. I sent the video about an hour after Dad left, thinking he'd already boarded his plane. But fortunately, he hadn't taken off yet and saw the message. He immediately texted me, Lock your door and don't do anything. I'm coming home. I sat quietly in my room for about 45 minutes until I heard Dad pull up to the house. I knew something was about to happen. I stayed in my room even after I heard Mom open the door and ask why he was back so soon. Within seconds, he started yelling at her, demanding an explanation for the video I'd sent him. He asked her and my brother what they thought they were doing. They tried to pass it off as a joke, but Dad had already read my message and told them not to dare lie because he now knew the whole truth. At that moment, Mom realized she couldn't get out of it anymore, that everything was out in the open. She started making excuses, begging for forgiveness, saying she was just tired and lashing out. I don't know what the real reason was, and I still don't because Dad refuses to tell me. After that, they went into their bedroom and I could hear them yelling but I couldn't make out the words, so I don't know what they were arguing about. All I knew was that half an hour later, Mom was packing a suitcase and sobbing hysterically. Dad told my brother to leave with her, and he didn't even argue. By then, I'd come out of my room, completely confused about what was happening, but it was obvious it wasn't anything good. After they left, Dad and I were alone. I finally gathered the courage to ask what had happened. He didn't go into details, just said I was safe now and wouldn't have to deal with Mom anymore. I could tell he was in a bad mood, so I decided not to press him with questions and went back to my room. The next day, he came to me himself, apologized for his behavior the previous day, and said he'd just been overwhelmed. Then he told me he was filing for divorce and that it would just be the two of us now because Mom was out of our lives. He also apologized for everything I'd had to endure for years and said he wished I'd told him sooner because he would have stopped it immediately. But now the decision was made, and he hoped we'd have a better future ahead. Honestly, I was glad they were getting divorced because it meant I'd never have to deal with Mom again. She and my brother had ruined my life for 16 years, and one video sent to Dad got rid of them for good. I was proud of myself for finally standing up and exposing them. The next few days were pretty calm. Dad worked in his office and we only talked during meals. Otherwise, we kept to ourselves. I understood he was struggling, but I didn't know how to help, so I just tried to be there as much as I could. When we did talk, it seemed to calm him down a little, but I could see he was still devastated and missed Mom a lot. A few days ago, Mom finally received the divorce papers, and I found out about it when my grandparents, Mom's parents, called me. We'd never gotten along because they were just like her, and I didn't like them at all. At first, I just ignored their calls, but they wouldn't stop, so I eventually picked up. As soon as I answered, they started yelling that I was a curse on our family, that everyone would be better off without me. They'd always disliked me, but this was too much. I tried to tell them they couldn't talk to me like that, but they said they could say whatever they wanted because I'd ruined their daughter's life. They claimed it was my fault she was now divorced, that all the years of her marriage were wasted because of one video I sent. They called me ungrateful because, according to them, my mother had sacrificed herself by giving birth to me despite a difficult pregnancy and complications, and I'd betrayed her. My grandma said Mom had risked her life to bring me into the world, and I'd ended up destroying her marriage. She said it would have been better if Mom had listened to her and had an abortion because that would have been far better than having a daughter like me. My grandpa hit even harder, saying Mom was now inconsolable and asking if I was happy now that I had the house while she'd lost her husband. I tried to explain that I never wanted the divorce and didn't ask Dad to leave Mom, but they hung up without even listening and then blocked me. Since then, I've felt terrible. I know they were trying to manipulate me, and it seems they succeeded a little because I do feel guilty about what happened. I feel like I need to fix this somehow because if I hadn't sent that video, Dad wouldn't have filed for divorce. Update 1. Hi, many of you have asked if I'm adopted or just an unwanted child. I don't have a definitive answer yet, but one thing I know for sure is that I'm their biological daughter. However, it's entirely possible that Mom didn't want me, judging by her behavior. I'm not going to apologize to her, and I'm certainly not going to undo what I did. I won't ask Dad to call off the divorce. That would be too much. Let my mom and grandparents be as angry as they want. After everything they put me through, they don't deserve sympathy or forgiveness, and they've proven that multiple times, especially during that phone call. It's surprising I even felt guilty, but I guess it's my people-pleasing habit, and I'm working on it so it doesn't influence my decisions anymore. I talked to Dad about it, and we decided I should start therapy. I explained to him that I stayed silent all those years because I didn't want to make anyone unhappy. I knew telling him the truth would break his heart. I hoped Mom would change and start treating me like a human being, but that never happened. I also had a lot of self-doubt because I wasn't sure he'd believe me, which is why I needed to gather evidence first. Basically, I have a lot to work on, so we're looking into therapy options, and if everything goes well, I might start sessions in a couple of days. Update 2. Hi everyone, I finally have an answer to why my mom hated me. You were right, I was definitely an unwanted pregnancy. I finally asked Dad what he meant during his argument with Mom when he said he knew the real reason for her attitude toward me. In my first post, I mentioned that I didn't press him about it at the time because that day was tough for all of us, and I didn't want to add more stress. It also seemed like something he didn't want to talk about, so I let it go. But today, a couple of hours ago, I worked up the courage and asked him. Dad told me that I was, in fact, an unwanted pregnancy. After my brother was born, Mom didn't want any more kids. Dad was upset about it but didn't force her to keep the pregnancy. His reaction was such that she decided to keep the baby just for his sake. Then my birth was complicated with lots of issues, and it hit Mom hard. According to him, that's why she started hating me. She told him she felt no connection with me from the moment I was born, but Dad thought it was just postpartum depression and that it would get better with time. It never did. When he told me this, we both started crying because, even though I'd suspected it for a long time, it still hurt to hear it from him. He said he feels guilty for everything I've been through, and we hugged tightly. It was a very emotional moment, but now that the truth is out, I feel relieved. I don't owe my mother anything. Yes, I'm grateful to her for giving birth to me, but she never treated me well. I don't hold a grudge against her, but I'm letting it all go without regrets. Update 3. Hi guys, I've been going to therapy for 2 weeks now with 2 sessions a week. So far, everything's going well, and I think it'll only get better. One session is individual, and the other is joint with Dad so we can rebuild our relationship on a healthy foundation. The divorce process has also started, and a few days ago, Mom and my brother came to pick up the rest of their stuff. Mom is now officially moving in with her parents, and my brother will live with them too. They completely avoided contact with me and didn't even try to talk, for which I'm honestly grateful. Fewer reasons to deal with them. Let them hate me as much as they want, but it won't change the fact that their own behavior led to this situation. They destroyed everything they had with how they treated others, and now they'll reap the consequences of their actions. I'm not going to feel sorry for them. Right now, my priority is rebuilding my relationship with Dad and just moving forward, being as happy as possible.